Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series, Megalo Box. And I loved this episode, following up from the previous, which I found to be utmost compelling and full of characterization and depth and gravitas. And that definitely, for me at least, carried through into this episode with this ongoing inner ring battle between Aragaki and Gearless Joe, respectively. And the whole thing, you know, there were levels of trying to psych each other out. There were levels of trying to wear each other down, whittle each other's resolve down to the nub. And Joe kept sort of having his ass handed to him. He kept getting knocked down. And the count would start and he'd get back up. And he starts reciting this thing about, you know, applying your weight 50-50, you know, keeping on your feet, keeping at the ready and everything like that. These same sentiments that were taught to him by Nanbu, by Pops, that were also taught to Aragaki when Aragaki was, you know, his pupil of a sort. And it was really intriguing that, because it almost becomes a thing where not only is Joe trying to remind himself of that, trying to utilize that for his own satisfaction, as Pops observes, to bear his own fruit, you know, in the ring, but it also becomes something that begins picking at and chipping away at Aragaki's resolve, because he calls back to that as well. You know, we get the flashbacks of Nanbu having been training Aragaki so long ago. And it was just really utmost surprising to see how it was really an even match between these two guys. Now, some people might react to the actual fight, the actual bouts in this series, as not being that spectacular. You know, the whole idea of the choreography of the battle and you know, the boxing match, whatever you want to say about it. But this series, to me, it's become much more about the choreography of the characterization. The battle is just sort of the garnish. You know, the fight is just sort of the garnish to what is going on internally for these characters, psychologically, emotionally. And that carries so much more weight to it for me, who is not really a sports fanatic anyway. I've never been into boxing, you know, like, when it comes to fighting series and such like that. I mean, one of my go-tos is Samurai Champloo, as far as an anime series that has, you know, the samurai sword fighting and such like that. And while the choreography of the battles was pretty spectacular in that series, it was much more the depth of characterization that holds it up as one of my all-time favorite series, you know. And I feel the same happening with this particular series, where the fights, you know, they are what they are, but that's not where the focus should lie. Even though it is a series about boxing, tentatively speaking, it's more about the boxers than the actual sport itself, than the choreography, than the spectacular nature of their positioning in the ring and going up against each other. It's just a means to an end. And that really is what happened. I was very much gobsmacked to learn, you know, that Aragaki would realize he has to throw in the towel. And then the reasoning behind that, you know, I mean, you have Nanbu Pops coming in and saying, Joe, look, you're not going to win against this guy. I don't know what we were thinking. We were wrong. And Joe, his resolve, you know, as Pops points out once again, Joe's resolve only strengthens a la the Incredible Hulk as many times as he gets hit. As much more and more and more as he is getting hurt. He becomes stronger and stronger, and the fight is going to go on and on and on. And we see him with that psyching out of Aragaki, with that, you know, spread your weight 50-50, calling back to that. We see that Aragaki becomes aware of Joe's resolve. And there is this knowing sentiment. It's this, you know, just brief glimpse into the mind's eye of Aragaki where nothing is spoken. But they zoom in on, like, the side of his face, and you know the whole time, both he and Joe in their respective corners are just glaring at each other. Joe has that cocksure confidence, and Aragaki has now been so sort of whittled down, so taken aback by Joe's resolve, that this is his final consideration of throwing in the towel, but a grin appears on his face. And to me, that spoke volumes of Aragaki's own appreciation of the fact that Gearless Joe in that moment was the true, well and true, deserving successor of what Aragaki once thought himself to be, what he thought he could become. And all the while, all amongst all of this, we find out that when the other leg drops, Aragaki was on his literal last legs, his borrowed legs, in a sense, but these were the end times for him. Any more fighting like this, and he was risking never being able to walk again, being bedridden for the rest of his life. If he called it quits now, he pseudo goes out on top. He fights someone evenly matched with him and holds his own for as long as he did, and he could go out satisfied. But it's also the self-satisfaction of knowing when to quit, knowing your own limitations, respecting those limitations, and just seeking a better tomorrow, which is something that goes all the way back to his days with Pops. And man, it's just, as those gloved fists were hitting home time and time again, every poignant aspect of this story were hitting home, were like a clock to the jaw to me. And I found myself kept saying out loud, wow. All through the episode, I just kept going, wow, man. Because I was astounded at the characterization and the depth, again, the gravitas of these two well-fitted fighters going up against each other, both coming from the same sort of origins, you could say, at least in their having been trained by the same man in the same way. And both of them are on an evolutionary track. Both of them are becoming more than the sum of their parts and growing beyond their gifts, and it was just exemplary. And then, of course, once again, this all wraps up with minutes to go for the episode length. And I'm like, okay, so what's the next thing we're going to be debuted to? And it's basically, we have a third guy that is now going to be part of the officiation of the Megalo Boxing tournament, Megalonia. But even in spite of them trying to make a big media event out of this guy, the Bloody Lion or whatever the hell he was called, everyone in the crowd is asking, well, what about Gearless Joe? Does he have a shot? And I love, my favorite aspect of all of this was cutting back to Yuri. We haven't heard from him in a while. And you could almost forget, because Joe has plain-statedly laid it down, in dialogue as of either the last episode or the episode before, that he wants to go to Megalonia and he wants to win. It's not so much pointedly anymore about Yuri, whereas I think Yuri is still very much a significant part of his hoping to win, Megalonia. But having Yuri now recognize, oh crap, this Gearless Joe guy, this is the guy. This is the one, back when I chased him down and I handed him his ass, but he got up and he taunted me, and it's been bothering me ever since. He's actually gunning to try to come back into my realm, like I put the challenge out there. Come into my ring and we'll see how it goes. And here's this little scrappy dude dog, this junk dog. And he's trying. He's climbing those echelons. He's trying to bring the fight to me. And I love that look on Yuri's face, like, crap. Oh, crap. Okay, alrighty then. I'm just glad to know that we're back on course with that Yuri is now, having some level of awareness that Joe is gunning for him. And that is going to be sort of the end game when we get there eventually. So, another spectacular episode as far as I'm concerned. Love it or hate it. Anything goes in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of it. If you loved it, if you hated it, if you were dissatisfied with it, if you don't like the choreography of the fighting and everything like that, if you think it should bear more significance than it thus far has in this series, or if you agree with me that it's more so, again, the posturing of the characters and their stories, The backdrop is the fighting, is the boxing ring, whereas it's very much more of a story focused on the fighters themselves and what they're going through. At least in these last 2 episodes, that's very much been the case with Aragaki and Pops and Joe. So yeah, until the next one, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.